And we're live, streaming from the footsteps of New York City. We are Music Matters with Jason Tramm, and we're delighted that you could join us for our unique podcast community where we explore the issues and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. You can join us at our website for our complete library of 130 past guests and of our upcoming guests. We have a wonderful roster of guests coming up from the opera world, from the musical world, from the contemporary world, and everything in between. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have a wonderful guest today. Mr. Martyn Axe is joining us from the UK. He's a distinguished music director and conductor and arranger. He's been in the music theater business for over 25 years, graduated with honors from the Royal Academy of Music in London, and had a distinguished career in Europe before coming to the United States and directing the Broadway show Saturday Night Fever. He's also directed many other musicals from, School of Rock, Saturday Night Fever, Mamma Mia, to name a few. He's conducted all over the world, and we're delighted he can join us. Welcome, Martyn.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It's great to catch up. How are things in the UK these days?
Great. I'm just here because I came to take care of my family briefly. And with the COVID, it seemed to make more sense. But we're pretty much all locked down, which is good for COVID. But it's a very strange thing, just living in one little area for so long. But overall, everything's great.
So your normal life, what does your normal schedule look like pre-COVID?
Do we have a normal schedule? Well, I've taken the road less traveled. I tend to travel a lot. I don't like to sit by the phone. I wouldn't say it's the smartest thing to do because, if you stay in one place then you can build up. And I tend to, I've lived in England, I lived in Europe, but for the last 20 years, we've been based out of New York, and probably about half of that time I've actually worked in New York. The rest has been traveling, moving around. But I've got the work because I was based in New York, as you know. So there isn't any typical, when I'm touring, a typical day is putting on the show. And when I'm home in what I consider New York, even though I'm not there right now, it's just hustling, writing. Every morning I write and arrange. I have a pretty strict thing that I do. I just wake up and I always do something, whether it's learning a new technology, a new thing, or something like that. And then wait until something comes along, and then it's like crazy, and then you just kind of little nothing.
I love the way how original everyone's career, like yours, is such an original career. Did you always know you wanted to be an artist when you were growing up?
I always knew I was going to do music. I didn't know in what way. I was very lucky, had a great education from like 8 years onwards. It was just music everywhere. Music at orchestras, bands, choirs. But it was very classical. It was all classical music. And then I went into theater really after college. I kind of just fell into it, and then it just seemed to fit. I was like, I had no idea what this was. It fit all of my, seemed to all everything that I enjoy, everything I do. Because I also did a lot of rock music and pop music. I was involved in that at the time because I just I considered it, and I still do now, that pop music is still contemporary music. I mean, whether it's whatever it is, it's still music. And so I enjoyed that. So when I went into theater, I was like, wow, this is cool. It's well thought out. It's so different to classical music. It was quite jarring because, it's so strict. I mean, we're having discussions at college about, the whether you should actually have words with music because music is pure. And saw these philosophical arguments going on. Said, well, words destroy it. You shouldn't have words. It's two different. And then I'm doing musical theater when basically we're just following the words all over the place. So it was a bit of a jolt. But I just knuckled down. I learned how to play the parts. I learned how to play without reading music. That was a big thing. Classical, it has to be written down in front of you. And I couldn't play without the music in front of me at all. I mean, just nothing. It was terrifying. So what I did, I just went out and played in restaurants and hotels. And I would take, like just normal, and I would take, and you're not supposed to have music. But I would take a little cheat sheet and I would just play these songs over and over and over and over again until I memorized them. And then I started playing without music, and then I started to improvise. And so over like a year or so, I've managed to actually say, I can sit down and kind of play some chords and do that. So it's kind of how it started.
That's great. It's a different way of coming at the music, I guess. And what did that teach you about making music, learning to improvise and getting comfortable with your classical training and then incorporating the improvisational nature?
What did it teach me? It taught me that I was completely hopeless. There's always, the thing about classical music training, it sets the bar so high. You always feel like there's this thing, like it's never good enough, because, you're not competing, but you're comparing with Beethoven and Shostakovich. You're like, how can I ever write in it? So you've always got this thing. And then you suddenly do more improvisational, and then you're competing with these improvisers that you just think, I can't even think. So it's very humbling, but in a good way. It's like, okay, this is kind of cool, but it was just a nice thing to have, because I knew I didn't want to go into an orchestra playing. Like I said, I was very lucky. I was playing in orchestras from when I was like 10 till I was 22, did all the repertoire, toured, and piano wise, I just didn't want to practice 12 hours a day to play. At that time, I know it's still the same. It's like, how fast are your trills? There's all this thing, and I'm like, that's just not me. I just more into the music itself than the technical side. So I just always find everything in music very humbling. It keeps you never really kind of win at it, but that's the fun of it.
Isn't that the truth? The more you learn, the more you see how vast it can be.
Oh, my Lord.
We have a lot of young people listen to this program, and I say your bachelor's degree, your master's degree, I learned, I think I know less as I go. I've gotten my degrees and kind of get out there and meet other artists, and it's amazing how it's a limitless growth field.
Yes. Yes, no, absolutely. But anyway, I've answered that question.
I appreciate that. So with the, what was your first piece you conducted? What type of music did you first start composing?
Composing or conducting?
Both.
Well, I started conducting. God blimey, when was? Well, it was musical. Well, I did conducting at college, obviously, and I did some conducting, some little orchestra thing, which was lovely. And then I started doing musical theatre as music director. And you really, a lot of musical theatre is you're doing everything. You're playing the piano, you're conducting. I'm trying to think what was the first thing I did? It was a rock thing. Oh, it was a Christmas show. That was it. It was a Christmas show based on Narnia, and it was written by Bill Kenwright, who I don't know whether you've heard of him, but he died about 10 years ago. He was a very big director in England. He actually wrote the original Phantom of the Opera musical. It's a very famous story. He did a version. It was a play with classical music, and it was a big hit. And Andrew Lloyd Webber came to see it and said, "Oh, I should like to do this. Let's get together and do." And he never got back to him. So at one point in the West End, there was two Phantom of the Operas. There was Bill Kenwright's and Andrew Lloyd Webber's, believe it or not. And his toured for a long time, and he was a brilliant man. And a big taskmaster, which I was used to. I loved, because from classical, he's just. So I did that, and then it just kind of, and then I ended up going to Europe and writing some shows there. I did a contemporary version of Carmen, which we toured for about 6 months, which was set in the present time. This was the time when there was a few versions going around, and they thought, well, it's cheap because it's public domain. So they actually hired another composer, and it was not very good. And we were there and we listened to it, and everybody panicked. I said, well, I could do better than that. And they said, really? So that's how I got the job. I literally said, well, I could do better than that. So then wrote this contemporary version. It was, which was so much fun. so much fun. And also just to study his music, Bizet's music. I just got his original charts.
What is it about that opera? He that is the most hits per opera that I've ever seen. I've conducted Carmen like 30 times, and that's one of the shows. Every page is a hit.
I don't know, and it's such a shame that he didn't get to see how brilliant,
that's the sad part.
And he died. I know. I remember reading that he said. I remember he wrote. Didn't he write? Somebody said, "I've really something like this is like I don't know what happened here, but I've written something really brilliant." That was the. He really did. I did a lot of research at the time about it, reading about where he got the story from. I read the original story. And how different the story was, and the making of it is fascinating. It's just because it was very risque at the time, and they had to add things to make it more Christian, and there was all this. It's just I mean, he wrote a lot of it so quickly because it was like last minute. Because he said, no, you can't have some wanted woman. We need Christian values in there. So he was writing all this new music, and it was just fascinating. It is brilliant, yeah. And we toured that it was called Rock Carmen, I believe. I haven't thought about that for years, and that was quite a trip. I'll tell you, it was a lot of fun.
What was the orchestration?
It was just it was musical theater, so it was like a 15-piece or something like that. We're just touring around. But they wanted it to be contemporary. It was set on the Mexican border, if I remember rightly. So it had some Latin music. So we had some nice like Latin stuff in there, and yeah, I'll have to dig it out at some point. We did. It was fun.
So this nexus of musical theater, classical, and then rock and roll, it's interesting how musical theater kind of freely adapts multiple styles and kind of makes it into its own unique genre. What grabbed you about this is something I want to do for the rest of my career?
I think, well, again, going back, it suited my skill set in that I could, and that was mainly my classical, because I understood the music. So you just know one thing about classical music is you have it refines your taste. So you know what's good and what's not good, hopefully. But and also if something's not so good, like a new piece, you know where it should be going, so you can help out. You can maybe if you went up here. So, but really, I think I like I said, you're right. Musical theater borrows, and pop does it. It borrows and steals from so many styles. There's not, I mean, I've done rock musicals, and then there's Sondheim. There's no one real style. And I really enjoyed the realism of that. And a lot of performers are not trained performers. They just write. They're obviously very talented, but they have very different trainings. I mean, just getting 20 cast members together who, I mean, especially when I worked in Europe, we had Russians, Australians, Germans, everybody. And everybody being in the same place, all just doing one thing. It's pretty special. It's pretty exciting. That's the one that keeps us together. And there's very little arguments, because everybody just wants to do that. They're doing, whether you're a dancer, whether you're an actor, you're all trying to do, I mean, it sounds a little probably quirky or something, but I never get bored of that. I always think it's a small miracle that you can get 20 cast members, 20 musicians and crew all together touring or in the same, and they're not killing. I mean, what other profession would you do that? I mean, you're basically hiring people because they're right for a role, not because of their experience. So, if you're a classical musician, say, of any instrument, if you go to college, you can play that instrument. And it gets to a point where it can be up there or down here, up there, but you can play. I've done things with musicians and who have never been in theater before, who can't read music, but they're brilliant in what they do. So you've got those, so you learn from them. You learn so much. I learned, I played, Mamma Mia. I did Mamma Mia for a while with this amazing drummer who was just from a different world, just a great groove guy. He used to played on Jaco Pastorius' first album. And I just learned so much just by playing with him, just listening to play. It made me a better player. So you learn things like that. Just being around those people, that's when you think, yeah, this is not a bad way to make a living.
Who are some of your inspirations when you were coming up in the musical theater field?
In the musical theater field, well, of course, Sondheim is just, I mean,
amazing composer.
It never ends. I like it. And I think he's a good human. I think he's a good, he gets it. I enjoy people who understand what it is and understand their job, if you like. And he gets it. I think he just understands scene work, what he does. I like how he works. He knows what his strengths are, and he stuck out a lot in his early career. He really held on to what he believed in. And when actually at the Academy, there was no musical theater, but the students used to put on their own. And that was wonderful because they would have the full you'd have the full orchestra, the students would play. So you'd have these, and they did Sweeney Todd with the full orchestra. Beautiful. I mean, whatever size, I don't know what it was, but like 25 piece. I mean, something you never get to hear unless you see a concert of it. And it's just phenomenal. Those orchestrations are great. So there was obviously the Sondheims, the new stuff, the Les Mis, I appreciate it. I thought it was brilliant. I've seen that a couple of times, and I thought this is really brilliant. I mean, it's a whole different experience to watching musical theatre and working on it. When you start to work on it, you see the detail and the cleverness. There's something very. I guess it's a little bit like an actor who is a comedic actor. They have trouble being taken seriously. Yet comedy is the hardest thing to do, but because the work is considered light. It's like, oh, it's comedy. I feel the same a lot with musical theatre. It's not. I mean, certainly Andrew Lloyd Webber, God bless his soul. Oh, he's constantly fighting people wanting to change his music. He writes these melodies, and because it's pop, they want to improvise, and it's a constant thing. No, this is theatre. It's telling a story. You can't just because it's sort of a pop style. But when you work on it, you really understand the thought that goes behind it and the detail. And there's just as much detail in more popular musical theatre as there is in anything classical, I can tell you. And that's exciting. And that's what I can bring that, because that sense of detail was drummed into me as a child. So you really, and the more you go into it, the more you get out of it. And then, as always, isn't that with life? And then that's how you keep working, because you can bring something out of that work that maybe people didn't realize was there. I see that a lot, sometimes with me, but with other people. You just play something and say, well, what about this? And then it just changes without changing anything note-wise, but it just changes it, and you suddenly make it into something really special.
Every artist brings their own. They have something special to say. So when someone extraordinary comes along, they can take that same music and make it magic.
Yes, absolutely. Always. But that's why I said that's why it helps nerds like us. I'm not calling you, but we just learn,
Absolutely.
You listen to everything, but you listen to these things and you think, oh, if only it could be like this. But that's because you've done all this stuff that's going around your head. And that comes from, I guess, doing it. You can't learn at college. You just got to physically do it.
Be out in the field for a few years and kind of meeting the people and kind of letting ideas pass around. It takes a few years to get your sea legs to figure that out. I know for doing opera, it took me years of being an assistant conductor and following around other conductors who were much older than me. And now I look back and I say, boy, I'm glad I was around some of those older conductors who knew the scores so intimately and had all those years in the trenches with the singers.
Yes, and also I don't know about you. I've seen this many times, but I'm a big people watcher, and I love it. And there are some characters that are very big in the business, shall we say? They're a little character, and people make fun of them. Like they'll say, "Oh," and I'm like, they're the smartest person in the room, and you just don't understand. I'm like, this guy's or lady has had a 20-year career. Has worked with the best constantly, Hollywood movies, and they're still working. I'm just watching him. I want to know what he's got, because I want some of that, and it's the ones that seemingly either do nothing or nothing to do with it. You appreciate how brilliant they are, because when you're put in that position and you've got all the stuff coming at you, you know, and to do nothing or to stay calm in those situations, it's so hard. And then you appreciate, because I know some people, they look at people like that, especially directors, say someone like Trevor Nunn, or there's some other ones, they seemingly do nothing. And some people say, well, I could do that. But what they don't see is all the work beforehand, and also obviously picking the right people to have around you. And so then they get to direct and they're all over the place and things are falling down. I've seen it. I've literally seen it. But you just don't understand. They don't see the knowledge that they're bringing to the table, you know.
The conductor's always got, the music director or conductor has to always have that cool head, I guess.
Yes, you have to. Well, musical directing is, it's changed. It's changed over the year in theatre quite a lot, actually. It used to, what's changed, and it was really, I believe, I'm not a historian, it was Trevor and Andrew Lloyd Webber that changed a lot. It used to be that you would, you know, a theatre, you would have a, you know, choreographer, musical director, a director. That's the basic team, like any theatre. But what happened is they started to lock down their shows. So an Andrew Lloyd Webber show, Trevor Nunn show was their show, and you could, they would like, shows used to be licensed out, and they would just do their own, you know. But no, you have to use. So they would either put it on themselves, or they would send a surrogate. You know, they would send their assistant out and said, okay, because it has to. And I don't know whether they started it, but they were certainly a big influence on that. So now the supervisor, they also send a music supervisor out. They tend to be what used to be the musical director job. And what's become more, and especially as the bands have got smaller, the musical director now, well, you have to play keyboards as well. So often what happens is the music supervisor will do it, will rehearse, will put it on, is the oversaw thing. And so the music director is a conductor keyboard player, not a musical director. So that's changed a lot. It didn't used to be like that. So now I try and get more, you know, because I get supervising work, which is basically what I've always been doing as a music director. You know, you just hire someone to do that. But yeah, that's certainly a change.
You bring up that it's interesting how things are always changing in every business, and when you look back at the history of music, and my doctor, I'm a college professor. I love to study these things. How performance practice is constantly shifting. My undergraduates are always amazed to see how, when you look at any style of music, society's changing, history's changing around it. Nothing's ever been the same, and it makes sense that in your career you've seen a lot of changes. We have a question from the audience, our first, and it's what would you notice the difference between the tastes of the musical theater audience is in London versus New York City?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. It's very interesting. I don't know. I hear more comment on that from Americans than I do from English people. We have a very big respect for the American musical theater, and I think I would be lying. There's a certain style of musical theater that is just very American, and I think we can do it and do it very well. But there's just a different style. I think the general undertaking is we are a little bit more refined. But I don't mean that is that's a better thing. It's just a little bit here, whereas American, it's bigger and certainly vocally, the sound is very different. It's a really big Broadway, but whereas we tend to, because I notice that whenever it's interesting, like even like with cast albums. Even like if a show like, say, I don't know, Phantom of the Opera or anything like that, a lot of Americans consider the original cast album as the Broadway cast album, even though it's not. I just see that all the time. No, but this is the one. Because that's kind of how we do it. It's kind of like, it's a better thing. And it's lovely. I think the reality is there isn't. I don't see any difference. I see English shows and I see I don't see any difference. There's obviously a different sensibility, difference in acting, difference in certainly comedic acting. I see some comedies in America and comedic, and I'm like, they're so different. It's a different sensibility, and I can't tell you what it is, but it's different.
Yeah,
I know
there's an explosion of great TV shows on the BBC that are really popular in the States these days. I mean, Broadchurch, really interesting, and it's watching these. I've become obsessed with some of these really interesting shows, and the actors are so good, and the stories are so different. It's so different than what I would see by an American production company.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But again, there's some brilliant stuff in America coming out right now. You just kind of go, but it is different, and I don't know what the difference is, but yeah, there's a difference, but I don't think there's as much difference as I think in the business we like to say. I know the process. I would say rehearsals, there is a difference. We're a lot more, we like more of a process, as in, learn through it. Let's find it. Take your time, so if you've got a 3 or 4 week rehearsal, you've got 3 or 4 weeks rehearsal. Generally, I've found in America, it's like your day one, you got to nail it. If you don't nail it, what's wrong? We need to nail this. And the end result is the same. It doesn't matter. But I feel for the performer, it's a little bit more understanding. We give them just a little breathing space. And we wouldn't ever want everyone to start singing or doing it on the first day. We'd say, let's just meet, and we'd meet quietly and just do our thing and slowly kind of bring everyone together. Whereas most let's all meet, let's all sing for the show. I'm like, right, we're going to learn everything this afternoon. That's a different approach. I think, like I said, the end result is the same.
It's a very New York attitude. Show up perfect the first time, and and away we go.
Yeah, no, they don't. They don't like it. They like you've got the job, you've got the chops. We just want to go through the process, So, yeah. So that's a difference. But I don't think there's a huge difference in other things, as maybe we like to say. I don't think.
So tell us about your first Broadway experience. What was it like rising up the ranks and taking the pit for your first Broadway show? What did that feel like? What was it like backstage before you got on the pit for the first time?
Well, honestly, it was fine. Here's the thing: when I left college, like I said, I left college, and then I did a couple of shows. And you're just thrown into the fire. You're doing anything like a Christmas show. You're doing 14 shows a week. And you're just thrown into the fire. Then I did another show again. Then I toured for a little while. One night, just different shows, just making it happen, and really great. When I started doing the bigger shows, I couldn't believe how much time I had, how easy it was. So even the Broadway shows, I'm like, let's open already, because I was ready to go. I'm used to having 24 hours to get the show up and running. And I've suddenly got 5 weeks. I've got 3 months of auditions, 3 months, 5 weeks, and then a 2-week tech rehearsal. I mean, I loved it. It was great. So by the time I was ready, I was just ready to do it. I was, because that's one of the things is now the what do they call them before the opening night? I've lost my mind. Previews. Thank you. It used to be a week of previews. Now it's 2 months of previews. Sometimes some of these previews go on for a long time. I think it's to do, I don't know. I think it might be to do with ticket sales. It's keeping everybody on their toes, kind of keeping the vibe going. It's not that they're not ready, but it's really, I don't know. There's some, I think it's something to do with that. So by the time you open, you're like, maybe years ago, but by the time I was doing these bigger shows, I'm like, we just need to open this thing. So it was exciting. Of course, we had all the press, we had the red carpet and all of that. But backstage, I was like, I just need to do this. Let's get it over with. And it was, of course, wonderful, wonderful.
And having been on multiple shows at this point in your career, has it gotten, what's it like? Does it change when you go into that pit? Does it change when you get a new show? I mean, does it ever get standard?
Standard. Well, if you do a show for long enough, it can do. But the no, I think our certainly as a musical director job, it's always interesting. There's always something new that night. I'm not one of these people who said no 8 shows a week. It's hard doing 8 shows a week for a long period of time. But it's a good challenge. It's a good focus challenge. Like I said, there's always something you have to be one thing you learn I learned early on is how to be really relaxed all the time. And it's very hard because you want to be present. You want to be, because you've got to play, you've got to respond, but you need to be relaxed enough to respond to what's going on. So if something happens, you've got to be, okay. But if you're like this, you're like, oh my God, well, something went wrong. Everybody's looking to you. And I've had some real doozies, and I go, okay, let's do it. I mean, that's what stage managers are great at. They're always very calm, but it's especially if you're playing as well, which is more the norm. I find playing live quite stressful. It's because you're going through a theater. If you play a wrong note, so you've got to be on it. But you've also got to stay relaxed enough so that you can respond if somebody misses an entrance. We did Mamma Mia, The Winner Takes It All. Do you know that song?
Absolutely.
Beautiful song. But it's kind of repetitive, it's da 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 da, And it was this girl's last night, and she just skipped a whole verse. So she started singing the words.
Oh no.
On the next thing. But the thing is, you're like, does she know she's jumped a verse? We don't know. She's just going. Is she just going to suddenly stop, like at the end of this? Because what happened is at the end of that verse, the music stopped. It would stop and then go into this little recitative thing and back. Is it going to stop? And I've got a band, and they're all looking, and the thing is, the band, God bless them.
They all know it. Yep.
Well, they don't. Yeah, they don't listen to the words. They just hear us singing, and I'm like looking around, like something. I'm trying to get their attention that something's going on. And so what happened is she did stop, and we just slowly kind of petered out, and then we got back, and it was all fine. But what do? You're in that. You got to think, okay, because at the time I've got to tell the band. I wonder if I'm sure the stage managers know because they're following the script, so they know. They don't. But the set change. There's a lot of things going on. Set changes and stuff. Does everybody know? So you're just trying to, you have to be on it for that. So you cannot. It's too much of a responsibility. And if you take the responsibility, as I do, it never gets boring. And I honestly think every show, it's a small miracle that we get from beginning to end without somebody either hurting themselves, killing themselves, or something, because it's so many things to fit in. So, I think if you stay curious, as you know, and stay interested in what's going on. I'm very interested in what's going on backstage with the crew. I'm always like, what's this? And the quick changes, because that helps me. If I'm there and I'm like, okay, if I do this a little too fast, then that quick change is going to, that's just an example, that quick change is not going to make it. So I've got to make sure I stay, that I get that tempo right. And I've had situations like that when set changes and I've wanted to pick the tempo. So no, you can't. 'Cause if you do that, it's not going to work. So there's a lot goes on, especially these days with so much technical stuff. There's a lot. So no, it never gets standard. You really are the captain of a ship that you've got to know every crew member's name, everything. And yeah, that's not standard.
No, that's not standard. So how do you divide your schedule between live musical theater and touring productions? You've done a lot of touring production. That's where we met you on a touring production. What's it like doing those two very different things?
What do you mean? Between what? Between two?
The tours and actually live musical theater.
You mean tour, not musical theater tours, you mean?
Yeah, I know you've been involved in like rock crossover tours and all sorts of projects.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. What do I do in the...
How are the two different? How do you find like the... how do you...
how to different...
Those kind of rock-inspired tours versus like musical theater. It's such a different medium.
Well, it's... Oh boy, is it. Oh, but yes, when we met, that was quite a trip. We did a hologram tour of Roy Orbison, and it's a brand new thing with full orchestra, and we had a day in each place. I picked up an orchestra in each place. I don't know why I said yes to that. It was crazy. It's so different. The thing is, theatre has such a tradition of people and rules and training that you know where you are. You know, this is what it is. I've never negotiated a contract, I don't think, in years. Your contract is your contract. This is the rate. And, you know, you have a union rate, you have this, and it's all, every little thing, and I'm like, it's fine. I'm not going to ask for a fruit basket in my dressing room. I'm just not one of those people. I mean,
green M&Ms like Van Halen used
or
to.
Green M&Ms. And, you know, I'm not one of those people. I see people do it. I'm like, wait, what's the point? It's just to get something. But working on the concert stuff, which is totally different, it's I don't even know how to, but I loved it. It was really great, brilliant people. I mean, I had a great time when we came to New Jersey and did the concert there, and just, you know, I know you have an orchestra there, but generally all the orchestras aren't real orchestras. It's musicians who come together, form an orchestra for specific events. And there's all these people that will come together, and everybody's happy to be there, happy to be working. It's a one-off. So, and you have a day to do it, and then you perform the impossible, and then it's finished. And it's that I love that kind of work. I'm one of these people that think, you know, we're born. What is it? We're born to. We're just basically born to grow crops, and then eat it, and then it goes down. You know, and so to have something from big, you know, to sow it and then feed it and then eat it at the end, it's very organic, and that kind of work to me is so great because you have this challenge. You get there, you meet people, you rehearse, you do it, you perform it, and it's done and it's gone. It's never going to happen again at that place in that format, and I love that. It's more what we do. I think is sometimes with theatre shows. I mean, shows I don't think were designed to run for 20 years. As they do. I think God bless them, and it's great, and they do it really well. And there's a turnover, and I've got some friends who work on the shows, and they're brilliant, and they do, and it works really well. But I think as a person, as an artist, you need to do other things, and to do that, to spend a day. I'm sure you have to say you have a concert. You just prepare for it, you do it, and it's just gone. It's like a dance or something like that. I love dance, just watching dance, because it's just in the moment and then it's gone. You know, so it was a wonderful thing, and I hope to do more of that, definitely. Yeah.
Well, so did you do the arrangements for that piece, or did you do the arrangements for that?
Yes. Well, it was based on an album. Oh, that was another show. They did an album of Roy Orbison. They started doing these things now. They had the voice isolated, and they would do symphony versions. It was beautiful. So some bright person said, "Oh well, let's do a concert," and I got asked to do it. And they said, "Oh, we've got all the, you know, you just have to wave your arms around." So they sent me the scores, but of course they hired all different arrangers, and we had a 27-piece, I think. No, 29-piece with some singers. Altogether, the band they used was like 85 people, because they had saxophones on some things, they had this on that, and it was a mess. And they didn't have any rhythm parts because I think the Sons just knew them, so they played on it. So they didn't write anything down. So all there was some string parts and and none of it was on the album. The album, whoever the producer was, it's all strings. They took all of it. There's nothing there. I'm like, oh my God. So I said, well, if you want me to do it, this needs orchestrating.
Create order out of chaos. Yeah.
But luckily I had time to do it. And of course it had to be exact because we had no time, and everything was to click. And if we got off the goddamn click, you know, the show came down. And so I had to really organize that. And it was a big feat, but it was a big success. We had a lot of fun. But yes, I did the arrangement. Arrangements are always like that. I would say at least 70% of my work is fixing something. very rarely does somebody come to me and say, "Hey, I've got something. We're doing this thing. Would you arrange it?" Or whereas it's always like, "Yeah, we do this thing and nobody knows what they're doing and it's not working. Could you fix it?" It's always after the event. I wish I could get the word. It's always like, I'm always the person. I seem to be that person. Just come, we need Martyn. And apparently that's what happens. Oh, ask Martyn, he knows how to fix it. So.
Well, you certainly have that personality that want to make things better, want to add something new and exciting to it. And how do you compare the process of arranging versus composing?
Composing is so hard these days. My difficult thing, well, arranging is easy. Obviously, it's much easier because you just need a style and you just have. That's pretty much set in stone, and things change a little bit. It's really just sounds change, but arranging just, there's just good and bad arrangements. Music, well, we have oh my Lord, there's musics. As one, I remember one of my old professors said, "Yeah, there's no 20, it's musics. Everything's changed so much, and even in the last 20 years, there's all this new music coming out. Literally, we say new music, but it's like a different style of music." Oh, and that, I have to thank you. Arvo, you posted something about Arvo.
He's one of my favorite composers in the world. Arvo Pärt, yep.
I knew of him, but I listened to him for days and days. That was a revelation. I totally get him. Very rarely. It's
and that was one song. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I played
his whole... It could be.
I've played all his stuff now. But he was great. It's very difficult because it's minimalism, but also it's religious. It's spiritual and religious. I think it's Catholic or just something like, it's not like it's spiritual, but it's very grounded. And that's really hard music to write and pull off because, it just is. Because you just
people don't realize how popular his music has become. I was reading a statistic that said he was the most performed composer from 2012 to 2018, and only John Williams' music was performed more.
No, really.
How can that be possible? I mean, and Steve Reich was talking that Arvo Pärt is totally not in the public kind of in the zeitgeist. He sits outside of culture, but his music has become so important.
Well, like I said, I listened to that first. I can't remember what it was. It was like 12 minutes long. It just blew. I get this. I was like, how come I don't know more about this? And I loved it. And actually, and what was great, I was actually writing some things, and I was literally getting bored of my own playing. I was really like, oh my God, I'm so bored of my stuff. And I was reading about his work with modes. And how he wrote, I'm like, you know what? I haven't written in a different mode in years. I do write them, but I don't specifically write. I write something, and I'm like, oh, it's Lydia mode. So right now I'm writing in the octatonic mode. I'm using a lot of, which I haven't ever.
Some real Stravinsky.
But it's also just like John Williams, and it's all movie scores sort of. I mean, I knew about it, and you do elements you steal from everyone, but I've never actually thought I'm going to write a piece in a specific mode like that. So I'm doing that. It's all because of that Arvo. I just what I need to do. I'm bored. I'm just writing in just the same things over and over again, and I'm really enjoying it. Really enjoying it. So that's the problem with composing is the. I mean, right now I'm doing some musical theatre stuff, which is a little easier, but a lot of musical theatre doesn't really. There's nothing really grabbing me right now. As of now, I prefer the older stuff, which I think is some brilliant stuff. But that's hard. Is what style? There's so many styles, and I think it's partly. A lot of it's the internet. When the internet came out in the music world and the art world, everybody was very excited because it was like a leveling the field. As you know, it's very hard as an artist to get. You have to go through record companies, you have to go through agents and managers, and they're like, oh, now all this great music that's not getting through, you can release your own albums and stuff. But unfortunately, the downside of that is they were also a filter. You had to be of a certain standard to even get that far. But now you're just bombarded with music, and you want to hear it. I don't know about you, I find it overwhelming, and I stopped listening for a little while because I just couldn't. So, and that affects your writing. I've just got so much noise, and a lot of it's very good. It's just so much. And so one of the good things about this is being able to really stop and think, and like not trying to keep up with what's going, but trying to find your voice again. Like I said, I'm writing this octatonic thing. I really enjoy it because it's still me. I'm not trying to do a Stravinsky or a John Williams. I'm still writing but just in a different mode. I'm like, yeah, this is what I should be doing, not listening to the noise, just actually going back to the greats and copying them and stealing from them.
And that's what they did too. Certainly, it's what they were all inspired by each other, and that we have the continuum that always lives on.
I do believe all the greats. I mean, we all know that. What is it? Amateurs borrow, professionals steal. I do believe, but it's the. Bernstein. Look at Bernstein. I mean, he steals like from the best, but he does it so pretty. But it's the same thing. It's putting two ideas together in a different way. It's simply that. It's just you get this, and that's what Stravinsky did, and that's what they all did. They just put it in a different context is a very big thing, and if you put it in the right context, in a different context, so you can steal from Stravinsky. And you can put something in there. It's no longer Stravinsky. It's yours because you've put that thing there. But of course, if you just copy it and write a symphony or a ballet like it, but it's really just putting two different things together, and that's what I'm working on right now.
Have you have you written concert music at this period in your life? Do you have any desire to go back to your classical roots and maybe write some symphonic music or music?
Here's the thing, because I get so I'm very, like I said, I'm very fortunate because I've been very busy traveling, and I wouldn't change that for anything because it's what we all dream of. We all dream to work, and you always have to remind yourself that thing. So no matter how bad your day is, remember 10 years ago you dreamt of being in this position. You have to remind yourself of that. So no, you don't. But And I kick myself every time. Every now and again, I'll have a slow day, and I'll just put on some Beethoven, and it's just like coming home. It just is. And this last month or longer, I've been listening to, like when I'm working, I'm listening to all the great requiems again and choral works, and that for me is soul music. I mean, I love soul music too, but to me. Because when I was a kid, my superhero was Beethoven. It still is. He's my go-to. I know. I think it's the pain and the deafness that goes with, but it's just the struggle. I hear, and we all do. I'm not saying it, but you hear the struggle. He struggled to write melodies. He struggled to write, but it turned out brilliant. And his Ninth Symphony is so strange and so brilliant. And so yes, I'm actually going, and that's part of the struggle. So I'm writing more things like that. But then I'm like, I also want. I guess I'm trying to find where would it be? What am I writing for a classical concert or a theater thing? It's like trying to find I don't want to write something that doesn't have an audience. Do you know what I mean? Or there's no point. There's no joy or anything in that. You want to perform it. Because you've got something to say. So yes, I'm going back to my classical roots. Like I said, the octatonic thing. I'm going back to that, and it's been lovely. It's been way too long, and it just I'm just so glad I've had that training as a kid because it's a place to go. It really is. I can just put that on. Like I said, that Arvo, I just put him on for days and days. I was doing my taxes, and I put him on, and I just kept stopping, and I'm like,
it's the most profound. It's the most profound music. It could be a simple triad with his tinted obulation, where he's got just one voice playing triads, one voice moving in, in like the scale patterns. It could be the simplest device in the world, and he started writing atonal music. He started writing the most difficult serial music, and then he made that transition, and he found his path. And it's, I'm hearing his music everywhere copied. every movie score, when they want to evoke a certain mood, it's like minimalism, but it's always like a photocopy.
Oh, I'm going to copy it. I've already been studying him. I'm stealing right from this. No, you're right, because and you're right. After I heard it, I'm like, oh, that's where all that music's coming from. You know, you hear, because there's been some brilliant. I'm trying to remember what there was one particular one, but it was a science fiction Netflix show, and the music was very simple, just a piano, like a little felt piano and string. I'm like, it was so beautiful. So simple, but not your standard like B flat to F. I was like, wow, that's really. And then I listened. I'm like, that's where he got it from. I'm like, so yes, he is everywhere, and I'm certainly going to steal from it. I've been looking into it, how just to churn a simple thing, but again, it's just two things. And that's exactly what he's done. He's got two things going on at the same time in the left and right, and he's created this new thing. I'm like, it's just two. It's right there in front of you. But no, I really thank you for that, because that really just, I don't think I've listened to a new composer and just got him. Sometimes I really like it. I'm like, oh, I need to study this, see what's going on. I said, I get it. And then you read his life story. I'm like, it's all there. He did all the atonal stuff. He went, disappeared, and this is what he came back with through that. And like, he worked it out. It's like he found the key to how to do it, and that's what we all want to do, surely.
Well, I can't wait. Now, you must have had a lot of time to focus on things like this with COVID appearing.
Yes.
And with all the drastic changes to our schedules as artists. What have you been doing with your COVID time, and what self-discoveries have you made during this period?
Well, first of all, initially I knew this was going to be a long time. I don't know. I think everybody kind of knew it, but nobody wanted to know it. But a year last March, I'm like, a year in September. You just have to look at the science, and so I was a marathon. The first thing I did is I do a lot of technical stuff. I'm one of these people with a huge, I've got 2 terabytes of sounds and VSTs. I have all the Vienna Symphony stuff, all the latest stuff, because I do mock-ups and do stuff. But the thing is, whenever I do a new job, somebody asks me to do something, I never have that instrument, so I have to buy another one and stick it in there, and I do it, then I never touch it again. So I spent the first few months really just going through everything and organizing my studio, learning my software so I could use it, so I can write quicker. And that takes a long time. But I enjoyed it because I had the time. I was watching all the YouTube videos and reading all the things like, how do I do this? How do I transfer this? And learning, getting my Sibelius chops better, because I can do it all, but I just tend to slap it down. And so I did that a lot. And then started listening again, listening to music, and I haven't listened for a while, and you realize I understand it more just because I'm older and because I've listened, and you listen to it again and you go, wow, it's even, and it's funny. It's sometimes I'll, like, for example, a Beethoven thing, I'll listen to it and for a long time, and I'm like, oh, I remember my music teacher when I was like 17 saying that, and I understood it, but I didn't get it. And I'm just like, oh my God, I get it now. It's like that.
Looking at a great painting, the perspective changes everything.
Yeah, and I'm really enjoying that. I'm like, I feel like a grown-up. I'm like, I don't just get it. I don't just understand it, and I get it. And one of the things about doing musical theater and the rock stuff, which has been a big plus for me, I find certainly as a player, we're not taught to listen. We're not taught to listen. We're really not. We're taught to listen to our own sound. We're taught to listen to phrases and stuff, but not kind of to music. Because I guess we don't need to listen to play our instruments. We just really listen to ourselves. But because also everything's written down, so we tend to, it's all about interpreting that music, and that's a never endless thing. And it's always a joyous thing. But when you do the more pop and rock, you have to listen. You've got to play with people, and the only way to play with them is to listen to them. And otherwise, you're in trouble. You can't just play what's in front of you. you have to slow down. You have to pull. A singer goes behind, or a player comes in. And so that really taught me how to listen. I think that's helped me going back to listen again to classical music. I'm like, oh, I really hear that pattern going on in there, but a lot of COVID, taking care of family, because I travel a lot. I don't ever really have time to visit my family. And now I've seen them more in this time than I have in 20 years. And really enjoying that. It's been great to have that time because they're all getting on a little bit, and to actually have quality time with them. So the whole thing, COVID's actually been pretty good to me. Except I just can't wait to be in the same room as someone else and making some music, and working with a choir, working with an ensemble. I take my hat off to you guys with the Zoom and stuff. It's not. If I got asked to do it, but doing my own thing, I'm like, it's too much. It's too much for me. I'm just writing and ready so that when I can start to move out.
Everyone's adapted that in a different way, and certainly, what do you think the next step's going to be for live music making? What are you hearing in the industry? What's the? Can you give us any behind the scenes action?
You mean theatre or concerts?
Both.
I mean, people are doing both. Yeah. Well, theatre, anybody who tells you, nobody knows. Because what they've got to get into place. Well, I know from the theatre industry, last year, right up until really Christmas, every month, the big theatre people, big companies would get together and have these plans. And then December, they just stopped because it's we've just got to wait. We've got to wait until this virus is over with. The plan is September, and there are some plans. There might be some stuff, but they haven't worked it out yet. There's just so much. I mean, just apart from anything else, even if they because to put on a Broadway show, it's going to be 2 months. You've got to clean it. You've got to do a tech run again. Actors, all the gyms have been closed. They're all out of shape. This is not me saying it. This is them. It's of course they're in shape, but not 8 shows a week shape.
Show ready, fighting weight.
So they've got to have a long rehearsal period to get themselves in shape, get the stuff, and then got insurance. Nobody wants to insure a show that can close. What do you do if there's an outbreak and the show closes again? Who's going to pay for that? A lot of hurdles to work out, which they're doing. The thing is, everybody. Everybody I know in theatre, they're such great people, really good at what they do, and they're going to make it work. I just don't know how long it's going to be. There isn't anybody tells you this is great. There are little outside smaller theatres that have opened up, but they can do 50% capacity. They're just doing it really as a thing. But until you can fill it and pay people, it's not really a viable thing right now. What effect that's going to have in the long run, I don't know. I just don't know. But the vaccines are obviously helping. They are doing concert work. I mean, Australia, they've opened up shows.
Yeah, I've heard. We've had a couple of Australian guests telling us they're doing rock shows outdoors, distanced, and they're finding ways to figure it out inside as well.
Yeah, they closed down right from the beginning. They just don't have any cases. Their numbers are we got 10, we've got 12, not 100,000. They shut down right away, and England didn't, Europe didn't, and they're paying for it. So I don't think honestly anybody knows. I think they think that maybe the smaller theaters off Broadway. There's a thought that they'll come back first because they can afford to do 50%. So if you've only got 100 people, of course you're not going to make any money, but you can do a 50 people. It's easier to control 50 people than 1,500. So there's a possibility that small, and the hope is that it's going to even out. They're thinking that maybe venues and theaters outside of New York will now get a little bit, because there's some brilliant ones, and they don't get the kudos they deserve. They don't get the backing. They don't get the flashy because there's like Broadway and then there's the rest of the world. It's like, but now they think, well, if they come through and they can make it viable, maybe now these great theaters will actually get a little bit more attention, which would be lovely. Yes.
Well, as we emerge from this, we wish you continued success and continued great music making in so many different ways. And where can people go to find out more about your work?
My work, well, I just have a website. My name, martynaxe.com, martynaxe.com. Although I haven't updated it, but not much updating. But I will do. But yes, and I hopefully I'll come to visit. I know Seaton very well. I used to live in South Orange. I
didn't know that.
Yeah, I lived there for, Milburn.
It's a great town.
Yes, lived in Milburn for a couple of days, but we used to go to South Orange because the little zoo there. There was a kind of a little zoo and
little turtleback zoo.
Turtleback zoo. We used to go there with my daughter. We used to love it. But yes, I would. When I come over, I'll come visit and come and see a concert of yours. I'd love to do that.
I look forward to getting together. Continued success and everything, Martyn, and all the best.
Thank you. Lovely to talk to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to like and subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and topics. Our next broadcast will be today at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have young rising mezzo-soprano Christine Byrne, who is actually a graduate of Seton Hall University and made her debut at the Welsh National Opera a few seasons ago, and we're going to talk to her today. So thank you very much, and remember, keep music alive.